Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from Lifting Pins and Needles. Welcome to my channel. In this video I want to show you some work I did on a pattern to achieve what I wanted, the piece that I wanted. So in my plans I said I wanted to make some sort of duster, longer length, maybe just mid-knee. I wouldn't make it longer than that, out of a thin chiffon sort of fabric, floaty thing. So I'd seen patterns around for wovens, like kadi type patterns, but it wasn't what I wanted. I wanted like a lengthened shirt, but that was open with no closures, that I could just sort of put on as a layer, but it wouldn't make me that hot. So I did a bit of brainstorming and I came up with some frankenpattern, like major. So I had inspiration from 3 patterns. The Florence dress by Sew Over It. Now from that dress I only wanted the neck collar piece and the shape of the neck. That's all I wanted from that dress. For the body I chose the Varda dress, which I made a couple weeks ago. I like how it fits. It's like a basic sheath dress with French studs. So I wanted the body of that with the collar of the Florence dress. And then I thought, how am I going to do that closure in the middle, because it's very thin chiffony thing. I don't want to be using interfacing and putting buttons. It's not the look I want. So I remembered how the kimono from Sew Over It finishes the neckline with like a little band. And I thought, perfect. I'm going to combine those 3 and make sort of like a pattern. So the pattern work that I've done for that is coming up now. If you find that interesting, I'll show it to you. So to make this duster, I'm going to mash up so many patterns, but basically I have the Florence dress from Sew Over It and I want to use this collar piece. So all the part that's going to be on the top of the duster is going to have the shape of the Florence dress. So this is the front pattern piece, and this has an extra bit here that acts like a facing, like that, but I don't want to do that. What I want to do is have a band similar to the Sew Over It kimono. So I'm not using this pattern, I'm just using the idea of that band it has there. And that band is 4 centimeters wide. So it's double, it's folded, and it'll finish off the edges really nicely because I'm using sheath fabric. So I want to have a band here. So this is the center front right there. And this is where it would crisscross over to the buttons. So I want a 4 centimeter band there. So I've measured 3 centimeters here, and I'm gonna leave an extra because of the seam allowance. So you can see there from the middle up to there is 3, and that's where I'm gonna place it here on the side of the paper. But because it includes 1 centimeter seam allowance, it will actually be 4 centimeters away from the middle there. So I'm gonna place that pink line right on the edge of the paper right there. And then I'm only going to trace out the neckline here. And then just the beginning of the shoulder, because I'm not going to use, you know, the shoulders. So there. You can see, maybe you can't. I'm going to mark it in blue so you can actually see. There. So this side here is going to include a 1 centimeter seam allowance for that band I'm going to attach there. And then this collar thing will be there, you know. So I'm going to do the same with the back. So this is the front piece I'm just starting to work on. And then the back over here, same Florence dress. I'm just going to place that on the edge of the paper. This is on the fold, and I'm just going to trace out this neckline. I want the neckline to be exactly the same because I'm going to use the collar. So that is why. So there is the edge of my back neckline. So I've placed my Varda dress on top of the neckline of the Florence dress here. This is the front piece. And I want to take out a piece here too, because remember I'm doing that band. So I'm going to take out 3 centimeters there from the middle. So I'm just going to draw a line here 3 centimeters. Now I'm drawing 3, but it's actually 4 because I'm including that seam allowance, remember? So I've made the line there, and now I'm going to place this on the edge of the paper and try to match it up to the shoulder seams. There. See that shoulder mark there? And now I'm just going to continue this here. Okay, and now I'm going to continue tracing out the Varda dress, which is the shape I want for this duster. Now I'm going to bring the arm side up maybe 1.5 centimeters, just because I want my duster to be a little bit higher than my dresses. And then I'm going to continue tracing. I'm going to mark that little French dart there. So this is the top part of my front piece of my duster. I have to add on another piece of paper here, and then I'm just gonna fix the side seams. I'm just gonna eyeball here from here maybe and make it just straight. So this is slightly A-lined. So I'm just gonna true out here. So it will come in at the waist and then just sort of go straight down, not A-lined. And then I want to make this a tad bit longer. Little bit longer, maybe 1.5 inches longer. So I can see what I'm doing because I've got my cutting mat underneath and I can actually see the markings. So yeah, 1.5 inch longer. And then the other change I want to do is probably do some long side slits. So I'm going to measure them quite long, maybe a good 30 centimeters. So I'm just going to mark that there. So I've placed the back part of the dress here, the Varda dress, and I've folded in the seam allowance of the back. See that flappy bit there? I don't want it for this. I would actually do it for the dress, but not for this. So I've matched up the shoulder seams here on the top. The other change I want to make to the back, I don't want just darts there. I want to make a seam that will incorporate those darts. So I'm just gonna, from the center of that shoulder seam, I'm gonna draw a line that will meet that dart right there. And then I'm going to measure the distance from the middle to the dart. It's 10.5 centimeters. So I'm going to mark that down there, 10.5, and just continue that line down. So I'm going to have one center piece and then one external piece. I think it will look nicer. Just a design feature really, design line. Not that it's going to affect the fit because the fit is going to be exactly the same. So I've drawn little lines there along that new seam I've created, and especially along that dart. And when I cut these and separate it, these are going to be my notch lines. So when I put together my fabric, I'm going to make sure to unite that to that to that, so everything's nicely aligned. Here are my pattern pieces for my duster. I have the front, which is the same as the Varda dress, and it's going to have that French dart there. Here I need to incorporate a band. So that's going to be 4 centimeters wide. That means I have to cut a strip of 10 centimeters. So when I fold it, it's going to be 5, and then subtracting that 1 seam allowance is going to turn out 4. So I've gone and measured the length here from the top of the neckline down to the bottom, and it's 103 centimeters. So I'm going to have to cut 2 bands of 103 by 10 of width, you know. Here's my collar piece that's from the Florence dress. I'm going to use exactly the same pattern piece. And then my 2 back pieces there, I've separated them. When I cut them out on fabric, I'm going to mark all those notch lines and add a centimeter seam allowance in there. The dress already has on the side seams 1 centimeter seam allowance, so I'm not going to fiddle with that. But for this side, I do need to add on 1 when I cut out onto the fabric. This is how I've laid out my pattern pieces on 1.5 meters of chiffon. Now, you saw me when I was modifying the pattern that I wanted to do a seam there from the shoulder all the way down. I've decided against that. I probably will do that if I work on a solid fabric, but because I've chosen a print, I'm just going to do the normal dot. So you can see that little dot there at the back. I've placed that on the fold. Here is the front, and here is my little band. I'm going to move it so you can see it. Yeah, that band is going to fit right there. So it's going to be right on the edge. And then the wind is blowing my collar piece there. I'm going to get those 2 pieces out of that bit there. Cool. So when I did all the pattern work, I had the plan of having a seam at the back where that dot was. So I actually cut the paper to make a seam to enclose that dot, and I did that thinking yeah, that's fine. But when I went to actually place it on the fabric, the width of the fabric wouldn't let me have that extra seam there, so I just reverted back to the normal back pattern. That's just a back with a fisheye dot, like a 2-ended 2-point dot, and it's fine, you know. When I was doing the pattern work, I wasn't really sure what fabric I was going to use yet. If I was using a solid, I would actually try my best to have a seam at the back, because I just think it looks nicer. It adds like a design detail. But because I chose a print, I think that is fine without that seam. So I have the 2 options on the pattern. If I want to use it, I'll just cut the line, open it up, and add that seam, or not. So I'll show you it now. It's exactly what I wanted. I have this red and black sort of, it doesn't have squares or anything, but it's got some sort of print. I like it. Very sheer, you can see me through it, very lightweight. And here you see the collar from the Florence dress there. I really like it. I stitched it in there really close to the edge. I'm not sure if you're gonna see that, but I totally basted and did all the extra work to have a really perfect finish. The extra layer of red chiffon inside gives it enough stability for what I want, like interlining, without using interfacing, because for sheer fabrics, if you use interfacing, it does not look that nice. There is the band that I used to finish off that side, so it's just sewn on and then overlocked and pressed. I didn't do a stitch on the top because I think it would ruin the look. There are the long slits. I really like this, and the dots at the back. Can't see them either, but they do give shape to the garment. I'm going to show you how I did the collar, because it might be interesting to see the way I managed the chiffon without using interfacing. So I'll show you that now. Okay, so to do the band and collar, I'm showing you how I've sewn the band first on the inside, so it's nice and close, and then I've attached it to the bottom of the duster that I already folded as if I'm going to hem it. I've pinned it all the way up to the top, and then I've sewn it. There I've already overlocked, so that's how I finished the front. Now I have that neck piece there with the band attached, and that completes like a full pattern piece for the top. Here is my collar. I have chosen to interline with red chiffon. You see I've cut another layer, exactly the same piece, and placed it above the collar. So I have the red and then the 2 layers there that you can see. Then I'm turning them around, and I have that chiffon enclosed within the collar, and it'll give it more stability. There you can see I'm going to snip around that little collar piece on the top so I can turn it around nicely. Chiffon is really hard to press nicely, so I do the extra step of basting the top really precisely and then stitching it. Then I've placed the collar onto my main body, and I've pinned it really closely all the way around. So I've pinned the collar piece with both layers, the stabilizing chiffon and the red one, and I've left just one layer hanging out onto the side. Now I never sew over my pins except when I'm doing something like this, because this is not easy fabric to work with. So even if I go taking the pins out as I go, it might slip and I won't get a good finish. I do so very slowly so that I'm aware where the needle's going to hit, if it's going to hit any of the pins. So this is a rare exception. I will do this, put the pins sort of in that position and sew over them. Now you're going to see that I've already attached the collar. You can see I'm going to snip around there because it will help the collar sit better on you. Now there's another fabric because I lost the footage from that red fabric, but I've already done this on another one, so I'm showing you the process here. Now this takes a while. Get yourself a cup of something in a movie. I'm going to pin this by hand in, you know, fold it in like a centimeter and meet on the other side, so that it's really, really, really precise. Pinning this took a while. The fabric moves around. Then I get my needle with any thread, whatever, for basting, and I take my time and I go removing the pins and hand basting this on. So collars are really, really tattletale if the technique isn't good, and if it's wonky, it's gonna make your whole piece look really handmade and beginner. So if you take the time to baste the collar on, the finish will be so much more professional. See, you can see I've basted that on. It's really, really nice. And then I go off to my sewing machine and I finally stitch it in with a really, really narrow stitch to the edge. You can see there close up as I'm doing this. I mean, I've fast forwarded this a lot. It's not that fast, but I do take care to make it really precise. When I'm done, I remove all the threads. Cool. So I also have photos of me wearing this. I chose to just wear it over black jeans and a black top underneath. It's usually the way I would wear it. I would wear it with a red dress underneath or a black dress. I think those are the colors that match this. Now this was like my wearable toile. I plan to make many more of these in different colors. So have a look at the photos. Cool. So I really, really enjoyed this project. Not only the sewing part, but the part about having an idea in my mind and making it real, you know, in fabric. Thinking about what patterns I could use, how could I adapt them and mash them together. And I just really, really, really enjoy that part of sewing, at least for me, you know, because I can make whatever I want. You know, I don't have to rely on finding a pattern. So yeah. Perfect. I love it. It's exactly what I wanted, and I'll be making many more. If you like my videos, give me a like on the little button thingy, the thumb thing, and if you want to, you can also subscribe. Have fun sewing and see you soon. Bye.